Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
Thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Yes. That's right. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact that we're all up in your face at this time once again for the one, the only, Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. And additionally, welcome to it. Tonight, exciting stuff. Episode 338. 338 episodes of this show, if you can believe it. I can believe it. The last time my guest tonight was on, oh boy, it was a while ago. It was episode 76. So basically, it's been a while. I'm not gonna do that math right now. I guess I can. That's not that hard. What, 338 minus 76? 262 episodes since he's been on last. It was February of 2016, according to sources. And what a cool guest that I'm going to have. This is Mr. Tim Green of Louder Studios. Some folks know him from Nation of Ulysses, which is a fantastic and worthy band. Very cool band and rightly lauded. And some other folks know him for the fucking Champs, who are iconic. Iconic's thrown around a lot these days, but in this case, it's well earned. Iconic band, heavy riff-based band, I guess you could say, but really, really fantastic band. I had the pleasure of seeing them a lot back in the day because I lived in the Bay Area, and they played the Bay Area a lot. And so we're going to talk about that. So much more, as well as the re-release of the third Champs album, which actually, technically speaking, is was originally released under the name C4AM95, which is stylized as Champs. And yeah, that's it. Boy, if you ever want a recipe for success, definitely make sure there's numbers in the name. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. First of all, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I am your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer that's been touring and recording for 23 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron The Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may not be household names. This is episode 338. So if this is your first time listening to the show, archives of it are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding, at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. And if you like the show or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around the internet, and even leave a review. All of that helps people discover the show, beat back the almighty algorithmic overlords, and it's just the darn nice thing to do. I don't know why that's the sentence I made for myself. I feel like I stumble over it at least half the time, but algorithmic overlords. It's got a certain onomatopoeia to it. Wouldn't you agree? And I feel like that could be a Champs song title. Almost. Anyway. Yeah, let's get down to it. Why don't we talk to Tim Green? That's what everyone's here for, right? Is to talk to Tim. We're joined by none other than Mr. Tim Green. Tim, welcome to the show, man. Welcome back, I should say.
Thank you.
It's been a while. It was February of 2016 is the last time that I had you on the show, which was
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's like before Trump got elected, let alone the pandemic. So it's
before the whole world went to shit. I have this theory that 2015 was the last good year.
And it was like, are you like one of those people that like we have like the alternate universe and we're in the bad one kind of theory?
I haven't heard about that, but it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's at first I was like, that's hilarious. I was like, well, hold on, let's think about this a minute. But it's not all terrible news. There's a Drag City reissue of the third Champs record, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad it came together.
This is an interesting record because this is the one for me that I kind of came in listening to you guys. And I was mentioning earlier in the show that I had the pleasure. I saw you guys a lot because I moved to the Bay Area in '95 from Modesto, and I feel like I saw a lot of shows around that time, and I feel like I saw you guys a lot too. And it was like it was one of those things that, like when I talked to people that never saw A Minor Forest, I was like, I saw them all the time.
Yeah,
they wasn't around.
What year did you say you moved? You cut out
95. 95 is when I moved up to Oakland. So
the same as me.
Yeah. I was gonna say, and like I remember, but 3 is the first one that like you came to my attention, which I think 97 was that originally when it came out. Does that sound right?
End of 97.
So, and I'm a big fan of the like the album naming convention where it's numbers. Like I suppose we can describe it as Zeppelin, right? That it's like the Zeppelin thing. But I love that like the first 2 are basically not available for anyone to listen to, right?
Well, the first 2, like basically like the band had put out 2 full-length tapes and 2 7-inches before 3 came out, so it seemed logical to call it 3. But yeah, it does generate a lot of confusion.
Well, and then you got 3, and then the next one's 4, and the next one's 5, right? So that's but it's. I definitely was like both excited and confused because I at first thought it was I thought it was it was a put on, like it was like a meta commentary on like rock and roll music or something along those lines, right? But then later I was like, oh no, I just wasn't cool enough to know about these earlier records at the time.
and then you found out, oh, those records don't exist.
Exactly. Then it was like, I'm really not cool enough for that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's funny? Speaking of those records or those tapes, we used to sell them on tour and stuff, but somehow the master tapes got lost. Tim or Josh lost them, and then they had DAT backups because the master was actually from a cassette.
Yeah.
And then they had a DAT backup, but the DATs wouldn't play in the late '90s. Like when we tried to make more tapes, and when we were considering putting out the old stuff with Drag City.
Yeah. Why not, right? Yeah.
And those tapes wouldn't play. They were all like glitchy and just like aged DATs will get. And so in 2020, I dug out my DAT machine, having not touched it probably for 15 years, and replaced some parts on it. And not only did those DATs play perfectly, but like every other DAT I have in my possession all played.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, totally weird. So now I have good copies of those first 2 tapes if they ever decide to put them out.
So yeah, that would be very interesting. Nothing else for like fans of the band and for archivists just to freaking have copies of them again, right?
It's up to Tim and Josh because I wasn't in the band when those were made. It's their thing to pursue, but it would be cool.
That's fascinating because the thing I always hear about, and it's so hilarious to think about DAT, right? Oh wow, DATs, but like. That was like the thing. That was the thing that everybody was. That was the new hot recording technique. Oh wow, you don't have to buy tape.
Yeah.
And you think about that, and as someone that like records music too, right? Like, I mean, is the extra absurdity of that just exquisite or what?
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
I think that it's also fascinating that I think Champs kind of came up. Right during the beginning of that digital revolution for recording, it seems like there was a sort of like a melding of that, and that's really interesting to me as well. Almost as interesting as the 3 actually came out the time period that I think it's C4 AM 95. Right? Can you explain a little bit about that? We might have talked about that in the past, but that was like 7 years ago, dude. So apologies if it's repeating stuff, but.
So basically that was like, so around late 96 or early 97, we got some like kind of weird letters from Nashville that we interpreted as being probably from legal representation from the champs from the 50s who did tequila.
Right.
And they weren't like overtly threatening, but we were getting worried enough about it that we thought we better change our name. So we, for weeks or months even, we were discussing different names. And we even like one night we were like, all right, we're going to change our name to the Summer Nights. That's it. No more discussion. And then the next day it was like the discussion had never happened. But so ultimately for that record, what we decided on was it would still be champs, but it's just like encoded, and you have to like put your two fingers over two of the letters to turn it into champs.
Right.
And if you do the Maloik, the devil horns, whatever, and you put your finger on the album, it'll cover up the parts that don't make sense, and it'll turn the word into champs.
And I also ascribed it to, kind of what at the time was known as like leet speak, like L33T, where it was just like, oh, and again, before all the pretty people were allowed on the internet, there used to be like the haven of basically freaks, nerds, and weirdos, and there definitely was its own language, and I think that's probably best expressed in Rock and Roll by Brainiac, who stylized it with the 1, 3, 4 for the A, and I just assumed it was like some cool thing I didn't understand. Which
no, it wasn't a reference to that at all. We weren't even thinking about that. It was really just a way to still call it the champs, but have it be obscured enough to protect us legally.
Right, because who in their right mind would be like, this is the same name? No, clearly it's not the same name, man. Like there's no way.
The hilarious thing about that album is that so many people think that the title of the album is Home Taping is Recording Music. It says that on the spine or somewhere.
Right, yeah.
And that was just like a reference to that old, the thing that in the late 70s, early 80s, the little sleeves on records that you'd buy that would say Home Taping is killing the record industry or whatever.
Right, and then I think it was a Dead Kennedys that had and we left this side blank so you can help.
Yeah.
Like, that's how
and
I
then
remember
there was also like a flying saucer attack joke on that same thing. I forget what it was exactly.
Yeah.
So our take was like just that home recording is literally taping music.
Yeah, which is
it was just like a little inside joke, and so many people think that that's the title of the album.
That's the actual title.
Reason.
That's hilarious. Well, it is. I mean, like, that's kind of funny, but I think that it's interesting to me because when I got the record before I'd actually seen you play. I was not born cool, unfortunately. And it's just got that image. It's like a forest or an orchard or something, right? And it's kind of shades of green, kind of like tinted.
It's actually a rest stop in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
just happened
amazing.
to like stop to take a piss or something, and our roadie Pam had a Polaroid, and she took a few pics of us.
I mean, it looks awesome. Like, it looks super ominous. It looks like some serious business, pretty much. You know,
it's also like a little bit black metal, which we thought was funny.
So when I came to understand all of the absurdity of peace and love of the black metal world, I assumed it was some kind of like piss take / homage, whatever, to that.
It was an unintentional nod to the genre.
When did that book come out that had all the stories? I feel like it came out when I worked at the record store still, but I can't remember.
You talking about the black metal book?
Yeah, what was that one called? I forget what it's called, but that's
Lords of Chaos.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like I just assumed it was sort of because I think that Champs kind of came up when you were still. It was still possible to be mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
Easily. Like, it wasn't before. Like, now it's like if you play in a band, like you're pushed to quote unquote create content all the time.
Yeah.
And Champs are like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean that in a good way.
We definitely like tried, we did our best to cultivate mystery. And there's some mysteries that have yet to be revealed or unraveled, so I can't get into them. But
Sure.
But yeah, that was a conscious thing. It's funny too, just to backtrack for a second, what you're saying about the dawn of the digital age being around this time, the time period that we were recording at, 96, 97. It's funny because we did everything completely analog, like until the mastering stage. Like we went so far as to, like, we didn't want to rely on the mastering to crossfade songs, because there are certain songs that crossfade, a lot of songs that crossfade on the album.
A lot of them, yeah.
So what we did was we mixed down to 1-2 track, and then as we mixed the other song that preceded it, we would just turn on the other 2 track and have that come through the board into the other 2 track. So we did it all in real time, and all analog, all tape.
So basically, like, almost like the same way you do it if you're in like the 60s or something, right? I mean, like, just
Exactly, yeah.
Which is so funny.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So I think that in those records, it doesn't have the. Well, it makes sense because they're not digital records, but it doesn't have that sound. I feel like there's some records that, especially with like the, again, not to just blame DAT, but like that have that DAT sort of sound, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's a real thing or what, but it seems like a real thing to me, so I'm going to say it.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, and I think that it lends itself well to being reissued, because I feel like the attitude towards music has been changed multiple times over. I mean, think about the fact that most people are experiencing things through like these walled gardens like Spotify, right? And it's like they hear it, it's all, kind of just smooshed together with everything else at the same time.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a audience that like wants something, for lack of a better term, permanent, right? That wants something that's like, this music means something to me. This isn't content. This is music. And
yes, they want something tangible.
Right. And for like a nice vinyl reissue of 3 is like, I mean, almost like a perfect case study for that for me, where it's like, because the nerds, and I include myself in that category, that are into this kind of thing are going to want to like hear all the crazy, I mean, things like where you like change the fidelity of stuff, like mid fade and things along those lines. Like it's really like deep rich listening if you're willing to put into it. Was that kind of like how you always envisioned doing that record, or was that just something that you were having a blast and just going for it?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, we definitely were like assembling the record as we recorded. Like we started in April of 96 and finished probably around May of 97. And as we were going, we were thinking like, okay, this is probably going to go on this side, and these other songs are going to go here, and we were sort of like assembling it in our heads as we went. So some of it was intentional, and some of it was just sort of spur of the moment. Let's make this weird or fuck it up or whatever.
Right. And it's like what there's like 24 songs on there. I mean, it's a pretty there's a long there's a long record. But then something like Flawless Victory, which is like 7 minutes plus. But then you have a couple that are like on the shorter side too, and it's kind of meant to be listened to as a record. Is how I always have.
Definitely, yeah. It's very like album oriented.
Yeah,
listening, and it's like the sequencing is very deliberate, and like the way that we wanted to have the listener experience it. Like side 3 was always meant to be the difficult side, where it was sort of test the listener's patience, because after Flawless Victory there's like this amorphous kind of 20 minutes or so where you're just like, what the who
is this like the same record?
It sounds nothing like the band normally does. And
Yeah.
And then even when you get into side 4, it continues with ROM, because that's still, there's no drums. Yeah. So it's still a little vague about like, what the band is. And then from there on, it's all just like hard rockers, like 4 or 5 in a row. So the reward is at the end of the album if you can make it through side 3.
Side 3, which has the reprise too. It has some sorts of, which I always love when bands do that.
Yeah. I think that was also, there may have been something about side 3 of Physical Graffiti, which we were really into.
Yeah.
And we used to listen to all the time on tour. I think a lot of this was like a sort of also a nod to not just Led Zeppelin 3, but to the Physical Graffiti, just the pacing of it and the kind of shifting moods or whatever atmospheres.
Well, and it just occurs to me that not for the first time, but you guys seem to have such a deep, abiding love for that style of music, but also like a healthy sense of humor about it as well.
Yeah,
that can only come from punk rock, in my opinion. Like I think,
I mean, if you can't laugh at yourself, then you're doomed.
Right, and that's there's variations on it. I mean, there's like I played Now Is the Winter of Our Discotheque, which by the way is maybe top 20 all-time favorite song titles.
Thanks, that was one of mine.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a Concentrick song almost, right?
That was actually. If I'm remembering the song correctly, that's one of Josh's songs, but I came up with the title for it.
Nice.
Like there's a lot of songs on that album that are just like one person fucking around in the studio, and in some cases it wasn't even intended to be for the Champs, but ended up being. But that was one where Josh like was in the studio and just recorded it on his own, and then I came in and added something and kind of came up with the title. And there's a lot of songs, probably like a third of the songs on the album are like that kind of situation.
And so you're recording this kind of as you go, right? So you're not like sitting down for one big session and recording, 25 songs or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You're doing it as you go. Are the songs, when you're putting them together, is the writing being informed by like what's come before? Like, hey, we need a this kind of song, like especially whatever. Like all of side 3 apparently is.
Like that, I mean, not really, but it just kind of happened organically.
Yeah.
I mean, I think with like I don't think we specifically wrote anything that was informed by the other songs necessarily. It just kind of happened organically.
I think I saw you guys a lot back then too, but it probably took until the record came out to actually be able to discern like which songs were which. It was like, oh yeah, it's great. They're riff monsters. It's a great show. And then like, and that was true. And actually something that Chris, who I used to play with, used to always say was just like, oh yeah, like anytime they're like on a bill with like other bands have to step up their game, which I thought was a very nice compliment for someone that does not give compliments like that at all, to be clear.
Yeah.
But how does it all start off when you move and they're already established, right? Champs is already established, but I feel like it really came into their own. I'm fucking up the tense here, but you know what I mean. I feel like the band came into its own around 3 is what I'm trying to get, and that's when it seemed like there was a very like an increased level of awareness, and then also, I mean, I think that's when I first heard about like things like tonal music, which I thought was amazing, by the way. That's a great that's a great descriptor. When it comes in, when you get there, do you just start writing immediately? Are you like learning the old songs first, off the first 2? Like let's go with the mix. I know Tim also, other Tim also is a great guitar player as well.
Yeah, excellent.
And that's rare.
Yeah, he's one of the best guitarists I know.
Yeah, and I feel like if you were not aware of like Bay Area music, it's almost like the fucking Champ sort of came forth fully formed from the head of Zeus or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what's that period of arriving and starting with the band and writing and finding that voice that became what is known as 3? What was that like? How long did it take? Was it pretty quick? Did it take a while?
You talking about the album specifically?
I mean, in the band, the lead up to the record, like you're coming in, and like, how did you know those guys? Let's start with that, right? Like, how did you know those guys?
So I was in a band called Lice in Olympia that was like a loud, sludgy loud band.
Yeah.
Played through. I played through 2 Model Ts, through a 215 and a 412, and the bass player played through a Sun Coliseum, through Joe Preston's old cab that he played with the Melvins. And anyway, we did a West Coast tour, and a friend of a friend put me in touch with Tim about setting a show up in Santa Cruz at the Red Room, which he did, and he set up a show for us, and the Champs played, and everybody in my band, when we saw the Champs, we were just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
This is something else. And we ended up staying at Josh's house, I think, and Tim was there too, and we just hung out with those guys all night and kind of bonded over our love of Confessor and Carcass and Cathedral, some other metal stuff, as well as other weirder, kookier stuff. But I just stayed in touch with Tim after that, and then Champs came up to the Northwest, and we played a few shows with them. And that was 94 when we met, by the way. And then 95, they came up and toured the Northwest, and we played some shows with them. And then later that year, in July of 95, I moved to San Francisco. And pretty shortly after that, me and Tim started a different band called Exhume. Not exhumed.
Yeah, no D. Yeah.
This is before that, or maybe they had just started. We weren't aware of them.
This is the action, not the past participle or whatever.
Exactly. And it was me and Tim and Jade, the drummer from Space Boy. We never played any shows, but we recorded a little bit of stuff, just like practice tapes. And we would go down sometimes Tim would come up to SF and to write songs with me, and then other times we'd go down and practice with Jade. And I think we did some of the songs. There were some songs that I had written. I'd come up with the name Exhume when I was still in Olympia, and recorded some songs under that name, and we played some of those. But ultimately, it just never really panned out. And around that same time, getting into the beginning of '96, Tim and Josh were wanting to move to Santa Cruz, and Adam, the other guitar player, didn't want to move, and he was playing in Space Boy, and he was more interested in playing with Space Boy. So they parted ways, and I joined the band in February of '96.
Nice.
And played our first show in April, and started recording in April as well.
Yeah, I feel like there's it was like a pretty quick spin up, really. But if you already were that familiar with with them having like played shows forever, I think that makes sense. And I seem to recall, wasn't there like a thing posted about your Model T in Lice too, like last year or something? Somebody bought it. Greg got it. Greg bought it, right? Am I remembering this right?
Well, that's not really what happened, but that's what the post said.
Okay.
I purposely didn't comment on it because I didn't want to get into a whole can of worms, but I still have both my Model Ts. I never sold them, so I don't know. It's just a weird coincidence that he bought a head that says Lice on it.
It says Lice on it.
It never belonged to me. I still have both my heads.
That's a copycat Lice head? Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. And actually, I saw that post. A bunch of people told me about it or tagged me in it, whatever.
Yeah.
I just refrained from commenting on it. And then I talked to Greg a few months after that, because I worked on a couple things for his label last year, and he brought it up, and I was like, yeah, I hate to disappoint you, but that's not my head.
It's not my head.
we never had that conversation on the phone. So
it's a great story. It's just too bad it's not true.
Yeah.
But it is a great story. I will say that I think that he was marveling the fact that he was aware of the solid state ones, but never knew that there was a tube Sun at the time or something along those lines, which is hilarious if you think about it.
It's funny too, because when I first joined Nation of Ulysses in '89, I was playing through a Sun Sun concert lead.
Yeah.
One of the solid state ones that I got for $40 or something at a pawn shop.
That was great.
It was great, but you basically just had to turn it to 10 to get it to the store.
Exactly. It's there's so much headroom. It's too much headroom.
Yeah, and that's an issue with a lot of their solid state stuff. Is it just doesn't distort unless you really crank it.
It takes pedals well, but yeah. I think I'm kind of vaguely remembering last time you were on that you're talking about driving around listening to Bullhead. Is that is that track? I'm having like a weird kind of.
You mean in Nation of Ulysses?
Yeah.
I mean, whenever I was driving, I would often play the Melvins, and Bullhead and Ozma were probably my top two around that time.
See, I remember our last episode, or at least one thing from it 7 years ago.
At that time, there weren't very many Melvins records out. There was Glue Parchment, Ozma, and Bullhead.
Yeah,
and the Eggnog 7 or 10-inch came out around the time that we were touring. So really, there was just those first three records to listen to. I listened to them a lot.
So Lice is over. You move to the Bay Area. Do you just hit the road immediately, or is there like more of a shorter spin up?
You mean like touring?
Yeah.
We started doing like West Coast tours in '96. Like the first one was probably, around June or something.
Yeah.
Sometime that summer, we went up to the Northwest and played a handful of shows. And that we would do a lot. We would do that pretty often. We would go up and play Seattle and Portland and Olympia.
Yeah.
And then '97, we did 2 U.S. tours. And we thought we would have the record ready by the second tour to sell, but it didn't actually. There were holdups with the pressing, so we didn't actually get it till the end of that second tour.
Right. Yeah, and that's I seem to recall something about that at the time, and it just being kind of like, I feel like people have a much stronger grasp on what it takes to make a record now, but at the time it was just like I don't know, like they show up eventually, at least for me, but I didn't play music yet, so
yeah.
But I remember I heard some of those songs kind of earlier on too, and just be like, oh wow, I want to hear what that sounds like recorded, and it took a while. It took a minute. When does Extra Man come into the picture?
That was actually an old one from one of the first 2 tapes.
Oh really? Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And that something where, was it ever conceived of as being a live act, live song? Live act, Jesus Christ.
I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure they played it before I was in the band, but I think I saw them play it once or twice.
Well, and I just remember because the many times I'd see it when you guys would play it, but kind of before it was known to be like the block rocker. I'm not going to call it a hit because it's but it was something that people would get pretty stoked about because there was such a dichotomy between that, and it's also kind of like, oh, that's like one of the best like Thin Lizzy riffs that they never wrote. And then it goes to this crazy prog stuff, and then it comes back to it, and it's how perfectly perfect all that is, right, for the band. I just remember it being like incredibly notable because it's not like you guys didn't have vocals, but it was definitely like there wasn't a lot. It was like more like riffs and shredding, and I say that as a fan.
A lot of the time when we played the songs with vocals, if we could talk anyone else into singing on them, we would.
You have someone else do it, yeah.
Like someone from another band that we're touring with, or just a friend in that town or whatever.
Yeah.
We would almost always, if we could find someone to do it, we'd almost always get someone else to do it, which, was just fun and also just added to the confusion for the audience. Like, who's this random person getting up?
Hey, who's this? What are they up to?
Yeah. I think it's nice to inject as much confusion into your live show as possible.
Well, I always appreciated and again, I guess I'm dating myself a little bit, but like with print interviews and stuff, it just always seems like, without being a jerk, there was definitely like keeping things mysterious and kind of oblique, I guess might be the best way to put it. Like, seemed to be like part of the mission statement.
Yeah.
Was that just a natural reaction, or is that something where you were like, oh, let's just, let's have some fun with this?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, it was a natural reaction, but we also were like, yeah, let's just go with this approach.
Do you feel like, so I assume that is remastering the original tapes 3, right? It was
Yeah, we actually like our old label lost the mastered copy, the masters.
Oh man.
So we had to remaster it from the mixed reels, which I have. And I had just done this crazy like year-long project involving some well-known rock stars from the 60s and 70s, which I'm not at liberty to talk about yet, but
fascinating.
Basically, like, there's this guy in Southern California that baked and transferred 25 2-inch reels for us for this project.
Holy moly.
So we and he
25? Good. I mean, how long? Jesus Christ. Okay, that's a lot. For people that don't know, that's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a half hour on each reel. So
yeah, that's a good chunk of time.
Yeah, they're from multiple studios from New York and London.
Nice.
Anyway, we got this guy to bake and transfer the tapes for us, and then I remastered it here, and we got John Golden to cut it because he's my favorite person for cutting vinyl.
Yeah, Gold. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And
plus, he did all our other records except for the first one.
Yeah, and it's sort of like when someone knows the band too, right? Like that's like there's certain things you don't have to like start over from zero with. That's huge. Like, you know, whatever. That distortion is intentional, you know. It's supposed to sound like that, yeah. Yeah, well, it occurs to me too that like that's such a great record to have a reissue too, because I feel like 4 is the one that like a lot of people kind of came on board for that one, and for good reason. That's good. That's a great record, and like that was you guys were very busy at that time as a band, but I feel like as a mission statement, like 3 is sort of like, oh, that's the true heads. There's a difficult side 3 of the catalog for sure, and I say that as a again, it's a compliment.
I mean, 3 is definitely like the defining moment of the band.
Yeah, there's like before that and after that.
Yeah, everything else is just records, but 3 is like the statement.
Yeah, and it's nice that there's a like a definitive copy in a record that is not just like a thing on somebody's computer you push a button on for people to listen to. And I don't know a nicer way to put that.
Yeah, it's funny too because we had finished recording the album in April or so, April or May. I think it was April of '97. And then we went on tour, and when we played Chicago, Dan from Drag City came to see us, and Bettina from Thrill Jockey as well. And we talked to both of them, and they both expressed interest in working with us, but neither of them wanted to put out a double album as a first album, if at all.
Yeah, it's sort of like that's. Oh, one about the record. Cool, it's a double album. Ooh.
Yeah, and I, if I'm remembering this correctly, I think Drag City was like, we'd be willing to work with you if you'd put out like a single album and then another single album later. And we were like, we really want to work with you guys, but we don't want to fuck with our plan. So that's why they didn't put out that first record.
You had a vision.
I think there was also someone else on the label that didn't really want to work with us, but eventually they decided to do it. But yeah, that's the story behind that.
Well, and I get it. Like I get their reticence, right? But by the same token, like it's just nice to have like have something that is, and I feel like this, technically speaking, it's late 90s, but I feel like there's a whole era of music that is somehow weirdly ignored right now, and most of it came out in the 2000s, and I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll talk to younger cats that and like mention like these records came out in the 2000s, like what? I never heard that before. And it's like, what, really? Like this is like a big record. Like what are you talking about? You haven't heard this before. And I have no answers for that, but it's something that I've noticed. But then people that do know are like, oh my god, yeah, that record is fantastic. Yeah. Like literally just something as simple as I'm gonna annoy the listeners, or some of them anyway, with a personal story. I've used the Extra Man riff to warm up at soundcheck because I just changed the different overdrives and distortions to check all those out to see how they sit. And I've done that once or twice and just had someone like run up and be like, "Oh my God, were you playing a fucking Champs riff?" I'm like, yes, I was.
Oh, that's cool.
And then that turns into like a cool discussion of the band. But then like I just feel like there's a whole kind of generation of people that don't know from it. And again, I'm saying that as someone that I saw you guys play a lot, right? I couldn't even count how many times I saw you play. But it was I always went. It's always good. I brought people along. They had a good time, even though. I used to say same thing about Man or Astroman, that like they may not ever listen to a record, but they'll come out to the live show and they'll have a great time.
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story about Extra Man. When we were on tour in New Zealand, we played in Wellington, played this really great club, and we're doing the intro to Extra Man where Tim plays guitar instead of drums, and some random drunk guy from the audience ran up and started playing drums along the lyrics.
That's awesome.
We were just kind of like, whatever, like we don't really care. Like, I'm kind of stoked when people do that.
Yeah. Was he eating good?
Within reason. No, he wasn't. Eventually he was ejected from the premises.
Right.
But, shit like that used to happen a lot, like especially at the Chameleon. Like,
the
Chameleon was just so like anything goes.
Yeah.
Part of why it was so great. But we'd have like we had a guy play congas with us for an entire show. There's this random Mexican dude who wandered in there.
Yeah, I think I saw you guys at the Chameleon a couple times, actually, if I remember right.
I think there was another time a guy played sax with us for the entire show.
Fantastic.
That might have happened twice, actually. It might have happened in New Orleans as well.
And that man was Steve McKay. No, it wasn't. Maybe it was. I don't know. I wasn't there. So when did you? So let's take it through the recording. You started recording in DC, right? Like before. I know you kind of set up shop at the Red House for a while when you were in Olympia. But were you recording as far back as DC? Correct.
Yeah, as far back as recording my own stuff as far back as '86.
Yeah.
Really, I started recording more in 1990, recording more other people's stuff.
Was the early stuff like 4-track, like real simple, or was it more like 8-track and?
Yeah, 4-track.
Okay.
Reel to reel.
Nice.
Well, actually, I had a cassette reel to reel I got in '86, like the later part of '86, and then I got a reel 4-track in late '88. So yeah, and I had a studio. I mean, well, I use the word studio loosely, but I had a recording set up at the embassy in DC, the house that I lived in, the group house, and I like built like a bedroom / recording room next to the practice space, basically in the basement.
Nice. Yeah.
Lived in there and recorded stuff, and actually I've been baking and digitizing old reels from that time period.
Oh, cool.
I came across some stuff that at first I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I couldn't figure out who or what it was. Like, for a second I was like, is this just some, because I used to like buy reels at thrift stores and
right.
either tape over them or dump the tape usually and put fresh tape on there from a pancake reel, but just because it was cheaper. But it took me a long time to realize that, like, oh no, that's me playing with my roommates at the embassy.
Oh wow, wild.
These random recordings that for whatever reason didn't make it onto the Embassy Tapes compilation.
How funny.
I just kind of forgot about it. I didn't have any like rough mixes of them or anything, so it was kind of cool to find that stuff.
Anything good? Was it?
It was pretty good, yeah. Like just like random kind of weird jams.
Yeah. Nice.
Not even necessarily like guitar, bass, and drums, just like weird,
stuff,
acoustic instruments and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's awesome, and that's such a cool era. I mean, like that. It's like what, like Circus Lupus, right? That was they were around that time, and
yeah, they were like the second band other than my own that I recorded besides Bratmobile.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Bratmobile. Yeah, forgot all about that. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's super cool. So what? And then when you moved to Olympia, that's what, 92, right? It was like somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, end of 92.
And you set up shop at the Red House, right? And I think Vern had his thing. Like, was that an 8-track? I don't know what it was. It was he had his his setup as well. We never talked about this. Sorry, but
Yeah, it's a little bit. Well, when I first got to the Red House, Vern didn't live there yet, and I was just doing stuff on my 4-track. Like the first thing I recorded there was Tiger Trap with Calvin Johnson.
Oh, cool. Okay, nice.
We just did it at my place at the Red House with the 4-track, and I did some stuff with Godhead Silo and.
That's right, because I had Kunka on, and he talked about that. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I recorded the Youngin stuff, and then we basically recorded the whole first Unwound record before they went into the studio, Cropper Studio. And then I don't remember exactly when, but at some point Vern moved in because Rachel from Kicking Giant had been living in the basement.
Right.
And then Vern moved in. And not long after he moved in, he bought Pat Nally's old 8-track half-inch machine, which Vern let me use in exchange for recording stuff for his label for Punk and My Vitamins.
Yeah, and that's where the the Carp record, right? Did he put out that one, or I'm thinking of the compilation, the single thing, right?
Vern and I recorded that T-Birds 7-inch together, that Carp 7-inch.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
A handful of other things, and the album Suplex I recorded with him at Mike Lastra's place in Portland.
Nice. That's a record that that's the legend has only grown for Suplex. Like that's.
Oh yeah.
No, like I'll talk to younger musicians, people in bands, and like it's almost like they think that like that album was as big as like a Smashing Pumpkins record or something. And it's like no, it absolutely wasn't. There's no
better.
Yeah, it's a better record for sure, but it was not like. I mean, if you knew, you were stoked, but it was not like a big record in the way that they think it is. But it's
I love that record. I really wish we could remaster it though, because the whole thing is like we were just starting to mix, and Mike Lastra was like, "Oh, by the way, I have this Sonic Maximizer thing you might want to try," which those things were just sort of coming into vogue at the time.
Sure, yeah.
And they didn't last long in that position because they were kind of crappy. And I'm not blaming this on Mike whatsoever.
Are you saying that it wasn't sonically maximized?
We were just wowed by whatever trick it did, and mistakenly chose to move ahead with using it. And we are also mixing at a pretty loud volume, so everything sounds really dark and really kind of muddy. So I'd love to be able to remaster that thing. That'd
be interesting, yeah, because it is like the sound of that is sort of. I mean, I've heard it so many times, right? Like I used to have it on a cassette. You know what I mean? Like I've heard it in so many different formats, and it's almost like that weird kind of darkness to the recording is kind of like almost endemic associated with it. So it'd be interesting to hear it without that, but it'd be fascinating too.
That's the thing with like classic albums, that even ones that don't sound very good, like Bullhead, for example.
Yeah.
Like they're still phenomenal albums, and it doesn't really matter. And at some point, like the shittiness of the recording becomes like a defining, if not endearing, quality of the album.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I remember back like in the early 2000s when I was working with the Melvins a lot, they were talking about remixing Bullhead and asking me if I'd do it. And I was like, I guess. I mean, I'd be honored to do it, but I feel conflicted about messing with the classic. After this was like around the same time of hearing the remix of Stooges' Raw Power.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I at that time I was just like, man, no one should ever remix anything ever again if this is gonna happen.
I mean, it was definitely like all right, you did it. That's the thing you said you were going to do, and you did it. But it's also like you maybe kind of ruined that record for some of us. But
I mean, part of the charm of that record is that all the guitar solos are twice as loud as they should be.
Exactly. It's like defined a sound, pretty much.
Yeah. And that was like the most important element of that, besides Iggy, and they lost it.
Yeah, it's just all completely brick wall, the entire thing, and it was like, okay, I get the aesthetic, but this is not the record I love.
Yeah.
So this is when you move into the original Louder, right? Like that's in SF. And yeah, wow.
That was the other thing, is that halfway through recording that Champs record 3 is we got evicted, so we had to figure out where to record the rest of the album.
Right. Sure.
We had been doing it in my house. Like I lucked into this incredible house that I actually got it through Alicia. I'm blanking on her last name, but she recently did a documentary about Bernie Madoff. She lives in Portland. She used to do Miss Murgatroyd. She played accordion.
Oh, oh God. I know exactly what you're talking about. I cannot.
Yeah. I'm just like brain dead today. I can't remember her last name. Anyway, I took over the
Is Alicia Rose?
House.
Maybe. Is that right?
I didn't hear what you said.
Alicia Rose. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Anyway, so I moved into her old house because she moved to Portland.
Yeah, she did stuff at KUSF too, right? If I remember right.
Probably.
Anyway, nobody cares. It's fine. Move on.
Anyway, so I put together like a studio kind of setup in that house with the understanding with the landlord that we would get an extended lease after the first year.
Right.
But in making the studio down there, I discovered a pretty significant crack in the foundation, and the guy decided to sell the house, and so we got evicted. But we recorded the first half of the album there pretty much, and it was actually a really good sounding room because it was basement, but it was like above ground for most of it because it was on a hill, so only part of the basement was underground.
Right, which is pretty rare in the Bay Area for people that don't know.
Yeah, and the walls splayed out away from each other, and the floor sloped downwards, where there was no parallel surfaces in the room.
Yeah,
and it was a pretty big room with like 10-foot ceilings. Also rare for a basement, maybe even 12-foot in some places.
I mean, that's rare for out here in Milwaukee. And here people take basements for granted.
Plus it was a detached house.
Yeah.
Not that we got a ton of noise complaints, so it definitely was not sustainable anyway, but I recorded some good stuff there, like that Emily Sassy Line album.
Oh, yeah.
Bakemono stuff.
Bakemono, yeah.
Henry's Dress, I did a 7-inch with them there. And
do you remember when Tom Flynn played in Bakemono for like 5 minutes or something? Do you remember that?
Did he play bass?
I think he did. I was trying to figure out because I'm gonna have him on the show pretty soon too, and like I have a memory of seeing him in Bakemono, but that's it. And like I'm like, is this an implanted memory? I don't know.
That's certainly plausible.
Yeah, it's
I can see that happening. Yeah, I think actually when I recorded them, I can't remember if they had a bass player or not. They must have, because I think Sean was still in the band at that point.
Yeah, that's a good band, man. I feel like that's a band lost to time, but that was a good band.
They're so good. Love them.
They were impressive.
Great people too. Anyway, so we got evicted from that house, and we ended up recording the rest of the album in our tiny little practice space at like 3rd and Hudson.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever go to that place?
Yeah. What was the name of that place?
I don't know if it had a name. I can't remember what it was, but it was on Hudson Street, right off of 3rd near. It was like maybe like 4 blocks down from Cesar Chavez, where it hits.
Yeah, where was what year was that?
97 or 96? No, 97.
I think Chris and I practiced there in an early version of Replicator.
There's a guy that lived there too, a Mexican guy.
God, it's crazy to think about, right? That like those kinds of spaces used to exist in San Francisco.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly big. There was probably like 12 spaces maybe, and pretty small parking lot. Had like barbed wire parking, but there was only parking for like 6 or 8 vehicles, so it was usually full. But yeah, so we recorded the last half of the record in that space that was probably like
not big,
10 feet by 15 feet maybe.
Yeah.
With no control room either, so we had to do a lot of guessing because we were doing sub mixes on the drums, putting the toms and the cymbals on the same pair of tracks.
That's crazy. I mean, that's like real frontier medicine as far as recording goes.
And I did a lot of other records there around that same time, like the second lowercase record,
Oh yeah.
and Cindy Doll's record, and some Starlight Desperation stuff, some Toad Liquor stuff.
Oh yeah. I remember all
But
that
you can
stuff.
definitely hear the change in recording quality on the album from the stuff that was recorded at the house to the stuff that was in this practice space.
What did you were you recording the that was, it was later on, it was about a year or so later where you did the trilogy stuff with Melvins, right?
Yeah, that we started in 99. Well, the first time I recorded them was 98, but we started working on those albums in 99, I think.
Yeah.
They were actually the first band to record it louder. Like I did a mix for Slaves.
Slaves.
Pleasure Forever.
Yeah. They used to practice across. They practiced in the next room over for us at the place in.
Oh, cool.
Over by Civic Center. Civic Center. What was that place called? I can't remember. It was like, it was like Mates of State next door and Slaves right across the way, and fuck, who else? I can't remember. Somebody. No, literally no one cares. You know what? Doesn't matter. Move on.
But yeah. Anyway, the first thing I ever did at Louder was mixing a record for them. But the first band that actually tracked was the Melvins.
Nice.
After the studio was done building, that was in April of '98.
Yeah, and those are pretty cool records. Like, I mean, it's I love the conceit of it. Each one being like different. That was. I feel like we may have talked about this last time, but I think those turned out pretty well considering the resources you had to work with, which was again just kind of still coming together, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I really didn't have much in the way of microphones or outboard gear or outboard mic pre's or compressors. Really pretty minimal.
Were you doing 16-track on that, or was that we did have the 24-track yet?
The first time the Melvins recorded with me was 16-track 1-inch.
A 1-inch, wow.
With a really tiny board.
Yeah.
I got a different board shortly after that, but yeah, most of that stuff was done on 1-inch 16-track.
Nice.
And then around 2000, I got a 2-inch machine that did both 16 and 24. So we moved over to that at some point during the trilogy, like when we were working on the Crybaby, the one with all the guests.
The one's got
it.
all the guest stars and the collabs.
Yeah, that's around the time I moved over to the 2-inch machine. I feel like maybe recording Yao, David Yao, was probably the first time I used that 2-inch machine.
Nice. Very cool.
And that thing just had, I was working on it like every single day. I ultimately replaced pretty much every part on it.
Well, and that's an interesting time too, because the band is, you're moving towards 4, right? It shouldn't be hard for me to figure out what the one after 3 is, but it was really difficult for me for some reason. And champs were pretty busy too, and you're also like recording everybody at the same time. Seems like it was like a lot of bit of a spinning plate act.
Yeah, it was really hectic for a while. I remember in the beginning of '99, I worked for 2 months with like 4 days off.
Yeah,
total. And that was, I could have worked more. Like the work was there, but
right.
I had to like scale back a bit because it was just killing me. And this was around the time that Frank was starting to send me some bands from Man's Ruin as well.
Yeah, man.
I got to know him through the Melvins, probably.
Yeah, what a guy. We shall not see his likes again, I think. I dare say.
Yeah, it's a real tragedy.
Yeah, that was a bummer. Like, it kind of seemed like one of those guys. It's like he's gonna be around for forever.
Yeah.
And I mean that as a compliment. I'm not. Whatever. Everyone turns out everyone dies, but he just had that presence, right? So.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of you hosted a lot of bands there. Some great records. The times in San Francisco before you pulled up stakes and moved to Grass Valley, which we can get into. But before we do that, I'm trying to remember, when's the first time that you really kind of vibed and played with Trans Am?
The the first time we played with them was in like spring of '98.
Yeah.
March or April of '98. We did like a West Coast tour with them, and we discovered them maybe like a year, like I think probably like halfway through or towards the end of recording our first album. I discovered their first album. I was working at Revolver, and I just saw the cover, and I was like, "Oh, this is a cool looking cover." And
Yeah.
I just, I don't know if I found an open copy and played it at work, or if I just bought it, with the hopes that it would be good. But I remember it must have been '97, because I was living on San Jose Avenue, like south of the Mission. It's called like Mission Terrace.
Right.
I was living in this apartment that was like right up against the freeway. It's actually where we mixed Champs 3. We carried all our gear because it was too noisy to mix at the practice space, because there's always bands playing.
Yeah.
So we moved all the gear up 3 flights of stairs, no elevator, moved it into my bedroom. I think we moved the bed out into the living room.
Nice.
I'm not sure why we didn't just set up in the living room, but for whatever reason, we set up the mixing room in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And we couldn't open the windows because the sound of the freeway was so loud.
Yeah, you don't want that on the record, yeah.
Yeah, it got pretty hot in there.
Oh, man.
And I remember around that time, I had been doing some work at Josh Roberts' studio in Oakland called Roof Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember them?
Oh, no.
Was it like 65th and Telegraph, I think?
Oh, yeah. I didn't know the name, but yeah, I do know that place. Yeah.
So yeah, I had been doing some work there. I did like some Lost Goat stuff there, some Peaches and some other bands.
Yeah, that's like right over by the White Horse, isn't it? Or am I thinking of a different? Like by that Jack in the Box and stuff.
I don't know what the White Horse is.
It's a notorious gay bar that I used to walk by on the way to work. That's how I know it. At the record store.
Sure, you did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I was working at Josh's place sometimes, and he had one of those manly tube compressors, the Verimu tube compressors.
Oh, sure.
As well as a pair of these Neumann EQs that came out of a mastering lathe, or a record cutting lathe, that is. And so I rented those 2 pieces of gear for the mix for Champs 3, just because I love the way they sounded, and they really added a certain magic with the overtones between the tubes and the circuitry, the discrete circuitry, and the Neumanns.
Yeah, and it seems like the Trans Am was sort of like, without doing the same thing, kind of came up around the same time, doing similar approach to different music.
Sorry, I forgot what we were talking about.
Yeah. Well, and it's
So I was just saying that I must have gotten that Trans Am record sometime after the fall of '96, because that's when I moved to that apartment, and I remember, bringing that record home and listening to it and telling my girlfriend at the time, like, "Holy shit, this sounds so much like some of the Champ stuff that we do."
Right.
I can't believe I've never heard of these guys, and they're from DC.
Yeah, it was like an alt universe thing, right? Where it was like, these guys are like, doing not the same thing, but it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. And then randomly they got in touch with us and were like, "Hey, you want to play some shows with us on the West Coast?"
Yeah.
And it came at a time, this was like, March or April of '98. And we had just done those 2 US tours the year before in '97. And we were pretty discouraged. I mean, I was just booking the tour myself with help from friends. And, it was a lot of shows where literally not a single person showed up, or shows were canceled last minute or fell through. So we were pretty discouraged at the time, and just sort of like taking a break from being beaten down when the Trans Am thing came along. And that, I really think that kind of like breathed new life into the band. Like,
sure.
Oh, we have these comrades who are into a similar kind of music and a similar sense of humor and aesthetic. So, and they're popular, and they want us to tour with them. So that sort of
sounds great.
that lifted our spirits a bit.
Was that around the same time you did that split 7-inch with Type Rose?
I don't know. I can't remember.
I feel like it was around that same time, because I'm not.
It was either '98 or '99. I can tell you that much based on the photographs that we used for the cover, because those were taken in '97.
And well, the reason why I bring that up is because that's crazily enough, that's how Type Rose came to my attention. That I didn't even realize that Jared was in the band. And I was like, oh shit, it's the guy from Carp.
Yeah.
But then they became like one of my favorite bands for a while, and like I just remember getting that split 7-inch like real soon after. I think it's Ace Foo or something. It doesn't matter. I still have it somewhere.
Is that the one that has Summer Nights on it?
Yes, he said confidently.
I'm pretty sure it is. That's like I was saying earlier. There's certain songs that like one of us would record on our own, not intending to be a Champ song, just fucking around in the studio basically. And that was one of those cases.
Yeah, Summer
where
Nights.
I recorded that song "Summer Nights" on myself, and Eric from Ace Foo was asking us about doing a 7-inch, and we're like, well, we're working on other stuff. We don't really have any spare songs, but we could use this other song that wasn't really supposed to be a Champ song.
Yeah. And it's Summer Nights, KNIGHTS for the audio listeners.
Exactly, yeah. And I got Tim to redo the drums, because I originally played the drums, and I'm not a great drummer. And then we wrote lyrics for it.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because me and Josh wrote most of the lyrics, and we were waiting for Tim to show up, and we were kind of stuck on the last verse. We couldn't come up with what to say, and finally Tim showed up, and we told him our predicament. He was like, "Oh, just say pull the Panther's hand out of your mouth and give it to me, or send it to me."
he just
had
that? Yeah.
How could we be so stupid? Like it has nothing to do with the song whatsoever, but it's just like one of the non sequiturs that actually totally works.
He just had that on lock, huh? He just had that ready.
Pull the Panther's hand out of your mouth and send it to me.
Yeah. Of course.
That's what it is.
Clearly, that's what it should be. Yeah. Amazing.
It's funny too, because in that song, like in the chorus, we do these backing vocals where we're just shouting out stuff that rhymes with Summer Nights.
Right.
And one of the ones we shout is Diamond Heights.
Yeah.
Because I lived like kind of near Diamond Heights. I mean, relatively.
That's great. Yeah, that's an awesome, cool little release. And then I think 4 came out shortly afterwards, and that, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's the first one where you were the fucking Champs, right?
Right. Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, because when we started working with Drag City, we were like, all right, we got to definitively
figure this
make a
out.
choice.
Yeah.
Because I don't think this code thing is going to work. It's too confusing.
It was to be fair, it was confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had already been making shirts. Like I made shirts. I had a silk screen at the time, and I made a shirt that said "the fucking Champs," just because people in Portland always used to call us that, and I just did it for the shirt.
It's a great thing to put on a shirt. Yeah, absolutely.
And at some point, I think we were just like, wait a minute, we already have these shirts that say "the fucking Champs." Why don't we just call ourselves that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was that.
Well, it was a hilarious. It can be perceived as a very authoritative move too, but also like just frustration as well. It's the fucking Champs, okay?
Yeah. I thought it was funny.
When did you start in doing that Double Exposure EP, which is the first of the two collabs? Because that was I think that was actually billed as Trans Champs, right?
Yeah, we must have started like sometime in 2000, because 99 we did another 2 U.S. tours.
Yeah, you were real busy around then. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, we played Atlanta 4 times that year, I think. Which is
Christ.
Considering we lived on the opposite side of the country, is a lot.
Yeah.
We did. I don't remember what the tour earlier in the year was, but the second, it was the second part of the year, like the fall tour. We did like 3 or 4 weeks with Don Caballero, and then we met up with Trans Am and did another 3 weeks with them.
Was that the one? Was it Dianoga that played with them? Played with you guys at the Bottom of the Hill show, or am I thinking of a different one? Or was it Ladio Blanco? I can't remember. I had Damon on, and I was asking about this same banal minutia then too, but
we have played with Ladio Blanco because they were friends with Trans Am as well, and we played a handful of shows with them. We played with them in Minneapolis and that area.
That was a band that actually it's rare that. I mean, no band sounds exactly like the fucking Champs, but I felt like Ladio Blanco kind of fit a small crew of bands. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense for these bands to be together. But then I also enjoy just seeing you with like whatever, like, you know, this good band is playing and also the fucking Champs are playing. Great. You know, nobody sounds like each other. Who gives a damn? You know?
Yeah. So we spent most of '99 touring and working on 4. So we must have started like, you know, halfway or latter part of 2000 working on the Trans Champs EP, which originally the idea was sort of hatched by the guy that does Temporary Residence.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Jeremy, is that his name?
Yeah. Well, I haven't thought of that guy in a while. Yeah.
He suggested that we do a split record, you know, like one side each. And we actually even took photographs for this concept, where it was at a show in Atlanta where the Trans Am guys came out and put on all our equipment. This was like during the show. And like they were we had someone take pictures of them posing with our equipment, and then they gave the equipment to us, and then we did the same thing with them when their time came later in the night.
Awesome.
And originally it was going to be a picture disc, and then at some point it turned into more of a collaboration. Like, rather than, you know, just each band having a side, we're like, why don't we just collaborate on these songs? So, you know, we did a handful of songs at Louder and sent it to them, and they worked on stuff on their end, and then they did the same where they sent us a song or two, and we worked on it.
And that's the, oh god, it's been a while since I heard it. What's the one? Is it the Trans Champs, or is it the fucking Am one that has John Theodore?
That's the fucking Am.
That's the fucking Am. Okay, I'm screwing up the rotation. Sorry, I don't do any research, by the way.
I didn't either. I was going to, and I didn't.
I had a real busy week, and
it's because I thought I had another 2 hours.
Hey, everybody! Hey. The idea wasn't necessarily do 2 EPs and have them released at different times, right? It was just sort of like, oh, this looks like it's a, like you said, picture disc. Was it literally just going to be like pictures of the bands, or like what do we mean picture disc when you say that?
Well, the picture disc concept was what we took the photographs for, where I was just explaining where we posed with each other's equipment.
Yeah.
Actually, I had the same idea for when Ulysses got asked to do a split 7-inch with it was either Circus Lupus or Trenchmouth, and we took some pictures of each other playing each other's gear, also in Minneapolis, coincidentally, at the Speedboat, or St. Paul.
I was just thinking of. I was actually just invoked Trenchmouth. Sure, I invoked Trenchmouth the other day.
Oh yeah,
it was the first time I thought of them in a very long time. But that was
so good.
That was a good band, man.
But yeah, we had that same concept, and I had the idea of, you know, the pictures of playing with each other's equipment. But then I forget why we weren't able to do that, and Circus Lupus ended up doing it with Trenchmouth, and they did the picture disc thing. But that was the original concept for this Trans Champs thing. But it morphed into like more of a collaboration thing. And it wasn't intended to be. It was it was just sort of a one-off thing. We had no plans to do a second one, but especially since that one wasn't received very well.
I liked it.
Yeah, we had fun. We had a lot of fun doing it, and I still really like it. But yeah, the fucking Am thing came about because I had written this riff that was like, it was a very Champsy riff, but it was also a little too goofy, if you can believe it, for the Champs.
Which is crazy because you're talking about the band that wrote Never Enough Neck Part 1 and Part 2.
Yeah. Like the music, like the riff was just a little too happy, a little too silly.
Sure.
Which again is, you know, if you can believe it, for the Champs. But anyway, yeah, I just was like, yeah, I have this song, and I played it at practice a handful of times, and we would play it, but I got the feeling that it wasn't really going to turn into a Champ song. So I was like, oh, why don't we just record this for fun? John Theodore, I want to get John Theodore to play on it, because I had this concept that when the drums came in, they would do this, basically the fill that they play in, what's that ZZ Top song? LaGrange.
Oh yeah, that's a great
that
fill.
drum fill.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
that drum fill would be perfect for the beginning of the song, and I know John Theodore can play it, so let's get him to come up from LA and we'll record this thing.
Is that why you
And
called it Gold? Because it's golden at the time?
Exactly, yeah.
Nice.
And Phil was also in Golden, and Phil happened to be in town at the time for some reason, and so he played bass, and we recorded that song, and then I wrote another song just kind of right on the spot there, thanks to drugs and alcohol, that ended up being the first song in the album.
Nice.
And then we had one other song that kind of popped up, and then Phil was like, oh, I have this like acoustic thing we could work on, which was turned into the whole Gomez trilogy.
The Acoustico, Elastico, Electrico,
Yeah.
Gomez. Yeah, the Gomez family of songs.
Yeah, and really that album just sort of morphed into a fucking AM album. Originally it was just a session to record this one song, and then it just kind of ballooned into a whole other thing. And then once we realized that it was becoming a fucking AM album, I was like, well, we should get Nate and Seb in on this. So
yeah,
summer of 2003, I went out to do a record on Martha's Vineyard, and afterwards I went down to DC and worked on stuff with Seb and Nate.
Nice.
And Phil. Actually, I don't know if Phil was there. No, he must have been there. But yeah, and we worked on. There's 2 songs that were tracked at their studio. Can't remember the names of them now.
I'm trying to remember when did Phil move to SF? Was that 2005? 2006? I remember Replicator was still a band. I remember.
It was like the very end of 2003. It's
Okay,
like November
that's okay.
2003.
There you go. Yeah.
He actually moved into my house.
And when does Josh kind of like not want to do it anymore? Like when does that come to pass?
So we had done the last tour with him was finished in the beginning of summer of 2002, and we were getting offers to play like festivals and all kinds of stuff. Like, and our tour had gone. The last 2 tours had been successful, like people coming to shows and making money and all that stuff, selling records. And then we got asked to play with like Outkast and
wow,
a couple other kind of big name bands.
Yeah, especially then
in Miami, and we were gonna do it. I think Josh was on board with it, but it fell through for some reason. And then after that, from like midsummer on, we just couldn't get a hold of him. Both Sodi and I would like call, text. Well, we didn't text because we didn't have cell phones, but we'd call and leave messages. We'd email him. We just could not reach him for like 7 or 8 months.
Oh man.
And we kept having to like tell people that were offering us shows and stuff. We'd have to just be like, well, maybe we'll get back to you if we can get a hold of our other band member. And then finally in like March of the following year, he called me and Tim, and we got together, and he just said that he didn't want to play music anymore. And that was like right around the time we started recording that fucking AM stuff.
Yeah. So you're keeping busy. You're still making music, but it's ultimately like the future of the band is sort of like in question at that point, right?
Yeah.
To put it bluntly.
Once we had that talk with Josh, it was like clear that we weren't going to change his mind.
Yeah.
And he was ditching it. And we just kind of didn't know what to do for a while. And then, Tim was really keen on moving back to guitar because he had originally played guitar in this band.
Right. And you asked Dale to play drums, right? If I remember correctly.
Who?
Dale Crover. You asked him to play drums, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, not like I think we kind of like threw the idea out there just for some shows or a tour or something.
Yeah. Obviously, kind of busy.
I don't think we were presumptuous enough to ask him to actually join the band, which would have been amazing, though.
But obviously a bit busy even then.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, because Tim wanted to go back to guitar, we were looking for drummers, so we used to tour a lot with Last of the Juanitas, and we really liked their band and their music and everything. Yeah. So, we had the idea to ask Johnny, the drummer, and he came down, and we were like, don't quit your job or move out of your house or anything. Let's just like get together and see if it seems feasible to make this work or not. And unfortunately, he quit his job and moved out of his house, came down to San Francisco, and it just didn't work. Like, he just couldn't get his head around like the weird time signatures. And
yeah, he's such an awesome drummer, but it's different.
Yeah, it's like, especially for the stuff that I write, because I just write whatever I write. I don't think about what time signature it's in. I kind of leave that to him to figure out. And then, most of the time, the shit that I write is in some bizarre time signature that shifts.
Just naturally comes out messed up.
It's just confusing to play to. And even like with John Theodore, like he's, probably the best drummer I've ever played with. Even like trying to play champ songs with him was, you could tell that it takes like a special brain. And we just realized after playing with Johnny for a week that it probably wasn't going to work, and that Tim should probably just keep playing drums. Ultimately it would be easier to find someone to play guitar than it would be to find someone to play drums like Tim does.
Which it's a shame because he is a monster guitar player, but it's also
he's incredible.
What are you gonna do?
And so I think it was actually when we were recording the fucking M stuff in DC in the summer of 2003 is when I just sort of said, like, more than half jokingly to Phil, like, he asked me what's happening with the champs, and I told him, and it didn't work out with Johnny, and I was like, honestly, it'd probably be easier if we just got you to join the band. He was like, okay. And I was
that's awesome.
I was definitely joking. I was like, partly maybe like 30% serious.
Yeah, kidding on the square a little bit, maybe, but.
And he was like, okay, yeah, we'll join the band. I guess he had been wanting to leave DC anyway and wanted to move to San Francisco, and so he moved at the end of that year, and then it took about a year to get him up to speed to where he could play a show, and there was other things getting in the way, like Trans Am tours and stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we were practicing for the full year, but most of that year we were practicing and getting him to learn all the songs, and played our first show with him in December of 2004 at Eli's.
I was there. That was a great show. And it was like one of the rare cases of like, oh, that works. Like, that's about the only dude I could think of that would like be perfect in that band, and like that works. Mm-hmm. It was really exciting. One of multiple momentous Eli shows I've been to, as it turns out. Yeah. But yeah, like that, and so that kind of opens up like a new era, right? Like it feels like. Then
we were trying to make up for lost time.
Yeah, you guys kind of came back with total ferocity.
Yeah, we toured like pretty much all of 2005. It's kind of insane. Like we did like a West Coast tour in January, and then March or April we started like a full US tour, and then we got to the East Coast. We left the van at my dad's house, my grandparents' house in Maine, and then we took a flight to Iceland and met up with I forget who we met up with there. Maybe it was just us. We met up with someone later in Europe, but we did a full European tour, and then we came back, picked up the van, and did the rest of the U.S. tour.
That is pretty wild.
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot. Before that tour, in March, we went to Australia and New Zealand.
Nice.
It was actually, I just was looking for some documents, and I came across our itinerary recently, and we came back from Europe and from New Zealand and Australia, and like 4 days later started that U.S. tour that turned into a European tour, and then back into the U.S. tour.
It's a lot of playing.
So, yeah, we played a lot in 2005, and then towards the end of that year, I was like, all right, we really should like focus on writing the rest of this album, because we had a couple songs. There's a song that me and Tim had written before Phil started playing with us. And then maybe like I had written a couple others after that, but you know, we really had a ways to go. So
yeah,
I was like, I proposed that we just put a moratorium on shows until we finished writing the record. And that once we made that decision, Phil joined another band, just started playing with Oneida, and Tim started playing with Crime and Choir. So nothing really happened.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about both of those things actually. Yeah.
And to be honest, I started playing the Crime and Choir too, just for like a month, because their guitar player was in med school and was just not available to play as often as they'd like, and so I filled in for him.
We played with them when Zach Hill was playing drums.
Okay.
Really early. I was like third or fourth show or something, pre-Hella even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Crime and Choir. I haven't thought of them in a while, man. And when does the and you do that one tour? Well, I guess before you record the Boy Jazz record, which I always was a Boy Jazz fan. I love that band.
Yeah, it was the best.
And there was that big tour that you took them out with you. Who else did you go out with that? I'm trying to remember.
Oh, Zombie.
Yeah, of course, Steve Moore. Yeah. Of course. Who I also know. I knew from when he played in Microwaves.
Yeah, we did half of that U.S. tour with Zombie and Boy Jazz, and the other half, the beginning half, with Parchment Farm and The Mass.
The Mass, that's right. Oh my God, yes, I remember all of this now.
Yeah,
all great bands, and like nobody sounds like each other, but just like a really great bill, you know.
Yeah. I love all. I mean, that was
Eric's such a badass. Eric's back in Atlanta.
Like, if we had any control over it, we would always choose the bands that we would tour with.
Yeah.
Once we started headlining our own tours.
Yeah, and that showed for sure. Yeah, that's wow. So when does stuff for the Champs kind of start to wind down? You did the move to Grass Valley, right? That's like 2011 or so, 2010, 2011.
Yeah, we got the house in 2010, and then for about a year I was back and forth from SF and here, and then 2011 I moved here permanently. Well,
and that was just, I mean, I assume it's at least partially fiscally motivated, but also you get a lot more bang for your buck when you have a recording studio, right? So.
Yeah, and that was really the main reason for the move, was to have more space for the studio, but better space.
Yeah.
But that was well after the Champs stopped playing.
Yeah. So does it from an outside perspective, it kind of seemed like there wasn't any big grandiose press release or anything. It just was just sort of, oh yeah, I haven't seen them play in a while. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, I just kind of gave up. I mean, like so where I left off was like the beginning of 2006, and Tim and Phil joined a couple other bands when we decided, we were going to finish writing the record.
That's the one with Neil Hamburger, right? That's on that one. There's like a Neil Hamburger contribution on that one, if I remember right.
Yeah. But yeah, so I ended up writing most of the rest of that record. I mean, the live songs, like the stuff that we play live, I ended up writing most of the rest of that stuff, just because those other guys were busy with the other bands that they joined.
Right.
And we went to Japan in May of that year, of 2006. And then most of the rest of that year, we were just recording. And then the record came out in 2007. And we did, we did the eastern half of the US and Canada in the spring. And then in the fall, we did the other half of both countries. And over the last couple of years, I had been feeling more and more like the other guys weren't really into the band. Like
Right.
it was kind of like pulling teeth to get them to practice or play shows or do anything. And then when we decided to finish writing the album, they joined other bands. So I got the feeling like they weren't really interested in doing it anymore. So when we got back from that last tour, I was just like, I'm gonna take a step back, and you know, I'm the one who always like calls everyone and says, hey, let's practice, let's book a show, let's
Whatever the thing is, yeah.
I just told myself I was going to take a step back and see if anyone else made a move, and no one did. I didn't hear from anyone from Timberfill for like 7 or 8 months, and
Oh man.
even when I did hear from them, it had nothing to do with the band. So I just assumed that my assumptions were correct, that they didn't really want to do it anymore. And I just kind of gave up.
It's sad. I mean, but it's also like what, 6 records? I mean, over a course of, you know, it's a long time for any band to be around.
Yeah.
It's a shame you didn't get to cap it though. Like, you know, like go out with a party or something with it.
Yeah, it's a real bummer. I mean, like when it was me and Tim and Josh, we just got along so well. We never had fights or anything, and
yeah,
I could just I never could imagine any scenario that would break up the band in my head. Like,
yeah,
it just seemed like the perfect equilibrium of personalities, and I could never foresee Josh becoming sick of music and quitting the band.
Yeah,
so that
does seem like a bit of a curveball for sure.
It was a real shock, and it's been a real bummer that the band kind of dissolved due to lack of interest. And I think part of it too was, you know, not many people came to the shows on that last tour.
Yeah.
Outside of our usual strongholds like Portland and LA and Chicago and New York, but generally like the shows weren't very well attended, so that was pretty discouraging as well. But,
Man.
I mean, I would have kept doing it. I'd play to no one if everyone in the band was into it.
If they were actually down with it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've been used to all my life, is playing to nobody.
Yeah, there's a brief periods where that wasn't true, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I did that Wipers tour, but other than that,
oh, that's Jesus. I'm glad you mentioned that because I kind of forgot about it. And do you know I actually got Greg Sage to agree to be on the show, but like then he never followed up with me and then ghosted me. But I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, yes, I'm gonna have Greg Sage on. It's gonna be so cool. And yeah, ghosted me. But
I'll tell him I said hi if
it ever happens. I'll definitely let him know that you said hi. How did that come to pass with you playing bass and Wipers?
I feel like we probably talked about this last time.
We probably did, but you know what, man? That was a long time ago, and there's a whole different audience for the show that doesn't go back that far.
Yeah. So Ulysses was on tour in early '92 in Europe. We had just finished recording our second album, and we had a day off somewhere in Holland, and we saw that Greg Sage was playing just under his name.
Yeah.
And we decided to go. We were in the neighboring town, or we were somewhere very close, and we got to the show and we realized we don't have any money. So we lied and told the person at the door that we were friends of Greg's, that we should be on the guest list for friends of Greg Sage's, and
yeah,
the guy was like, you're not on the list. And we were like, well, tell Greg that we're friends with Billy Karen from Bikini Kill. And so I guess that unlocked the door, and we got into the show, and then we talked to Greg afterwards, and we're thanking him for getting us in and telling him what big fans we were. And we happened to have a cassette of the album that we just recorded, so we gave it to him. And then like a week or two later, we were in Norway or something, and he got word to us through our booking agent that he wanted us to open for him in Hamburg, like in a few days. Nice. And we happened to have a day off, although we had to like take this crazy overnight ferry from Oslo to get there in time.
Sure, yeah.
We had to basically like play a show and then leave that night to get there in time. But anyway, we ended up playing with Greg, but you know, doing Wiper songs. It was Greg and Steve, and I forget who was playing bass. but we just stayed in touch after that. And he set up 3 or 4 shows for Ulysses on our last tour in Arizona, and he drove around with us to the shows. And
that's great.
Yeah, and I in particular stayed in touch with him and became friends with him. And in '93, we were talking on the phone one day, and he was like, "Yeah, we have this new record coming out, and they want us to do a European tour, but we don't have a bass player." And I was like, "Well, I'll fill in for a tour if you want me to. If you just need one tour."
Yeah.
And so we agreed to do that, and I went down to Phoenix and had 2 weeks to learn an hour and a quarter's worth of songs. And he let me choose the set list. I mean, other than we were doing mostly the record that had just come out, which was I can't remember what it's called now. Silver Sail.
So, I could picture the album cover, but I couldn't think of the name, which doesn't help when you're talking on the phone, as it turns out. But yeah.
So we mostly we did, probably 3/4 of that album, and then he was told me to just choose what other songs to play.
Nice.
His only caveat being that he didn't want to play Youth of America because he was having some health problems, and it's a really long song.
It is a long song. Yeah,
takes a lot out of him, and we also didn't do any encores that whole tour because of his health issues, and that was seen as a total affront to the people of Europe.
Europeans don't. Yeah, they feel very strongly about the encores.
I mean, it's just in Europe, it's just assumed that you're going to do a encore no matter who you are.
Yeah,
if you're the headlining band. So that didn't go over well. There was actually a riot in Berlin. I'm sure I told you the story, but we finished the set. We played an hour and a half, but we didn't come back for an encore, and we didn't play Youth of America. We did play Dimension 7, but everyone came to see Youth of America, and we didn't play it.
Right.
So people started tearing the place apart. They picked up the monitors off the stage and threw them in the room. They were trying to break down the dressing room door. We actually stacked up all these empty road cases against the door to keep people out. And
it's crazy.
A bunch of police came. We were trapped in there for 3 hours, and we finally came out at 1 a.m, and there's just broken glass everywhere.
That's some real Hard Day's Night stuff. Wow.
Yeah, someone ripped the grill off my bass cab, and just all this crazy shit.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Luckily, we had brought our bass and guitar into the dressing room. So
they didn't destroy that. Wow, crazy.
I didn't even own a bass. I borrowed a bass from Sarah Lund from Unwound. I can't remember why she had a bass, but she had a bass that she loaned me for that tour.
Nice. Well, it's still a crazy story. I feel like if I heard it, I forgot about it. I don't feel like I forgot about it because that's very unforgettable as far as stories go. But
and about halfway through that tour, we got asked to tour with Nirvana when we got back. Nice. And I told him that I didn't want to do it because from the start, I was really clear that I wasn't joining the band.
Yeah, you're just filling in.
It was just a one-off thing. And Greg had actually talked to me about he wanted me to join the band playing guitar, and they would get another bass player. I don't know if he was just saying that to keep me playing bass or what, but I just
it's keep you on the line. Yeah.
I mean, as much as I love the band, it's I just didn't want to waste my youth playing someone else's songs.
Yeah.
So I just I didn't want to do it, and he got really mad at me, and he wouldn't speak to me for the second half of the tour.
Oh man!
And nobody else in the road crew or band would speak to me if he was in the room. And he wouldn't. He wouldn't even speak to me on stage, to tell me what song we were going to play. He'd tell Steve, and then Steve would tell me.
Holy crap! That's intense, man.
Yeah, so I haven't talked to him since that tour, but I wish him well. He's a good guy.
Wow! That is absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. It was a real bummer. It was very, very isolating I had just turned 23 a month before that tour.
Yeah.
And was, going through some emotional turmoil of my own.
Sure.
Dealing with childhood trauma and family stuff, and just had being on that tour and not having anyone talk to you and not having money to like go home or go anywhere really.
Yeah. That's a real head trip.
It was very like psychologically damaging. But
Yeah.
the upside was that I came home with like $3,000, maybe $4,000, and had enough money to, invest in better equipment for the studio.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Greg Sage.
Yeah.
Too bad you were being a
Actually,
dick. But...
I had considered just like living off that money for a year or so.
Yeah.
My rent was $70 a month.
Oh my God.
And when I got back from the tour, I was talking to my roommate Rachel Carnes from
the Need and Kicking
from
Giant,
the and the Need and everything, and extraordinary person and musician. And I was telling her like, I'm trying to decide if I should invest in better equipment or just like live off this money for a year or two. And she's like, you should do the studio more seriously. And so I did. Took her advice.
Good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, would you say it's like a closed book for the Champs? Like, there's not going to ever be any more Champ shows ever again, or something along those lines? Or what do you think? Do you think it's possible?
I don't know. I mean, people's personalities and all that stuff aside, we've all got health problems now.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to get into it because it's not my.
No, it's fine. You don't need to.
It's not my place to talk about other people's health problems, without them present. But I think there are enough issues that would probably prevent us from playing, even if we wanted to. I mean, if Josh was willing to do some stuff, I would certainly give it a try. But I just don't know if
it'd be possible.
Yeah, Sodi has some serious stuff going on, and I've got like chronic back pain from a spinal injury for the past 2 years. Actually, probably gonna have surgery on it in September.
Oh man, serious business.
Yeah.
First of all, I wanted to say before we go, Elephant Rifle. That record's great, man. It's one of my favorite of the year.
Oh, thanks. You're talking about the new one?
The new one, yeah. It's fantastic. I had them boys on recently, and
oh, cool.
Yeah, really great record. And like the Rip Room record's great too. I mean, there's been a lot of really killer stuff.
Yeah, I love both those bands, both as their music and as people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what else I love? Drug Apartments.
The what?
Drug Apartments.
Oh yeah.
I remember right before the COVID hit that you even were playing some shows with them.
Mm-hmm.
So what all happened with that?
They just, I did that record with them in 2018 in the summer, and I thought they were amazing. Like I saw them. I can't remember if I saw them play. I must have seen them play before that show.
Trosper's the one who turned me on to them. It's like, you got to see Drug Apartments. I'm like, okay, I'll see it.
Yeah, because the drummer and the guitar player had a band with Justin called Tiki Dreamers.
Tiki Dreamers, yeah. Actually, you know what? I think one of the only shows that they played, I saw one of them. But even before that, he was like, you got to see Drug Apartments. And I was like, okay, I'll see him. Fine.
Yeah, they played up here at the local bar where everyone was playing at the time at Cooper's. And as is kind of usual here, a lot of people came to see the opening band, the local band, and then everyone left to go drink at some other bar.
Right, sure, yeah.
So there's only like 20 people left for Drug Apartments, but they just really they were like everything I was looking for in a band.
Yeah, Whit's a great front woman. I mean, like there's like.
Yeah, Whitney's incredible. It's just such a force.
Yeah,
and
real
a great
impressive
singer too, like excellent voice.
Yeah.
Good pitch.
Well, and then I thought this is pretty funny because like I definitely had a moment where I was like, I have to know these guys. Like I've made music in Oakland. I'm from the Central Valley. It's like, how do I not know this band from like Sacramento, ostensibly? And
yeah. Well, did you ever know the Yamos?
That's what we figured out. We figured out I was at the bar in Oakland by the BART station. I'm fucking blanking on the name.
Or your place too.
I'm trying to, it doesn't matter. But we were just sitting there trying to figure it out, and he's like, and there was
was it called Your Place Too?
No, it was it's the Golden Bull. We were at the Golden Bull, and we were sitting there and trying to figure it out. And then it was like, oh, blah 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 blah, Yamos. I'm like, you were in the Yamos. And he was like, oh, I was in Replicator. And then we were like, oh, okay, cool. So now, but it was definitely one of those things that like neither one of us were gonna leave until we figured out why we didn't know each other or how we, were ships in the night. It was really like esoteric rock guy shit. But anyway. Hell of a band. So yeah, so then you start the record recorded.
It's funny because Ulysses played with the Yamos in 1992 on our last tour.
Nice.
Played with them once or twice, and I thought they were cool. And then the Young Gins played like 2 or 3 shows with them in '93 when we did a West Coast tour, and I thought they were great and they're nice guys. Band. So it's funny to reconnect with them after all these years.
So you made a great record. I mean, whatever year that was, I remember it was on my best of the year show that I do.
The Dry Apartments record?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was, we recorded that in summer 2018. And I can't remember when Mike first asked me about playing with him, but I was just like, yeah, maybe. And then at some point in early 2019, I was like, you know what? Yeah, we'll do it. So I started going to their practices and learning the songs and like writing parts for, writing new parts for the songs for a second guitar. And I started playing with them in February, and we had our first show at the end of March with, what was that band that Justin and Sarah were in?
Nocturnal Habits,
yeah.
Yep.
And I actually was working here in the studio that night. Like I finished the session at like 10 and then drove straight down to Sac really fast.
Wow.
I got there like in the last song of Nocturnal Habits, like right before Drug Apartments went on. So I kind of missed most of their show. It's all like one song.
Yeah, we played with Nocturnal Habits and Drug Apartments, but you didn't play with them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the exact timeline, but it was
was it at the
it was Ivy Room. It was
Ivy Room. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it was great. It's a great show. I mean, it was but yeah, and then I remember like it was kind of right before COVID hit that there was like a whole tour and like it was all this stuff happening, and then
yeah, well we did a West Coast tour, like a 12-day tour in June of 2019.
Yeah.
And we played a handful of shows around SAC and stuff before that. But yeah, we did that West Coast tour. And then we're planning on doing a US tour in like September, October.
That's right. Yeah.
But I had been starting to have like a lot of weird health problems.
Yeah.
And I was on like some new medications that were really fucking me up. I didn't realize it was the medications at the time, but in hindsight, I figured out that that's what was causing all these issues.
Yeah.
Like I have this, I thought it's a long story. I have a lung disease that Justin also had, and some other Olympia friends, strangely enough.
Weird. I wonder if there's some correlation to.
There must be like some environmental toxin or something that was in the Red House basement, because everyone who practiced there, it seems like a lot of people that practiced there got this disease. And it's a lung disease. It causes you to be short of breath and have poor oxygen content in your blood.
Oh man.
It's called sarcoidosis. And so I thought that's what was like getting bad with me, because I was having trouble breathing. I was getting winded really easily, dizzy a lot, almost passing out a lot, heart palpitations. But ultimately I figured out that it was actually the blood pressure medication that I was on, which ultimately led me to having anaphylactic shock, and I almost died. I lost consciousness and fell face first onto the ground.
Dude.
And then was hospitalized for a couple of days. Anyway, so that all that is to say that those issues were like coming to a head in that summer after that tour that I did with Drug Apartments, and I was feeling like I probably couldn't survive a whole tour, like not knowing what was wrong with me at that time.
Right, yeah. If you have no idea what's happening too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I was, during that summer, I was going through a bunch of tests to see if the sarcoidosis had progressed. And like up to that, I had been diagnosed in 2010, actually when I was mixing Corin Tucker's record that my friend Seth Lorenzi had recorded up in Portland, and I went up there to mix it with him, and ended up in the ER because I was having some stuff that could have been like cardiac arrest type things.
Yeah.
And I remember Corin called her health insurance like helpline, and they were like, yeah, he should go to the ER right now. And it turned out to be nothing serious, but they were like, oh, by the way, you have this lung disease. And I just, I didn't really do any follow up on it because there isn't really any unless you start having symptoms. And then I started having the symptoms, but then the symptoms ended up being from something else, from this medication. But I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
So, and also around that same time, Whitney, the singer from Drug Apartments, had gotten this offer from a semi-major label, like one of those subsidiary things, solo, as a solo artist, and she was thinking about doing it. And
oh wow!
I was just like, between the health stuff and realizing that everyone wasn't as committed to the band as I thought they were.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to be in a position that I'd been in with the Champs where I was like way more into it than anyone else.
Yeah, you were the one that has to like generate the enthusiasm or whatever.
Yeah. And I it wasn't that situation yet at all, because Mike the drummer is like a total powerhouse when it comes to like booking shows. And
but he also has like 2 restaurants or something too. I mean, like, he's a busy dude.
Oh yeah, like I said, he's a powerhouse. Like,
yeah,
he amazes me, like how much he gets done, and he has 2 kids.
Yeah, it's game respect game. Yeah, for
young
sure.
kids, like super young at the time.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. It just between the health stuff and realizing that I had sort of idealized the band in my head, that I just assumed that everyone was like 100% on board, and I realized that wasn't the case, and I just didn't want to like go down that road again.
You see them play, it seems like they couldn't be anything but fully committed. They're just like a force of nature. But
yeah.
Damn, man. Okay, well, I got my answer, so that's good. I was genuinely bummed about that. I was like, man, like this is like pretty freaking cool. But
yeah, I don't know. We also kind of were coming from different musical backgrounds, and I have a feeling that we had written 2 or 3 songs together after I joined the band, and I just was sort of getting the feeling that we might be just too different musically to really like gel in a good way.
Yeah.
I don't know, just like the people that wrote the music in the band were way more into like pop music and garage music than the stuff that I was into.
Which is not how it comes out at all. But
yeah, I
get it.
And I could just sort of tell from the way that certain parts that I wrote were received that this wasn't really the direction that they were interested in as much.
Yeah.
I think eventually we probably would have butted heads if I'd stayed in the band.
Well, dag, yo.
The cool thing is that our very last show was a house party in Sacramento in this tiny house, and
that's rad.
The cops came, and I mean, I think we played most of our set, but the cops came and were like, "You got to be kidding! Like, this is, we can hear this 2 blocks away."
Right.
And I don't know, it was a cool way to go out.
That's awesome. Like, I mean, to be like have the cops bust up a house show you're playing, as like, not. It's like one thing when you're 17, but it's another thing when you're a grown ass man. That's pretty hilarious. I love it.
Someone, I don't know who took this video, but someone took a video like where they're walking down the street, and it's a quiet residential neighborhood in Sac. It was like on V Street. Like, I don't know if you know Sac at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's a grid. It's really easy to know.
Yeah, it's kind of like Portland, like the way it's laid out. But someone took a video with their phone where they're just walking down the street towards the house, and it just sounds like absolute chaos, like banshees screaming and howling, and the video ends like as it's approaching the house, and it's just like deafening even from that distance.
Fantastic.
So I'm pretty stoked with that ending at least.
That rocks. I love that.
The crazy thing too is that I didn't even realize how long they had been a band, or that they had a bunch of other members before that.
Yeah, they'd had a few iterations.
Like I just never did my homework, I guess, because I just knew them as the 4-piece that they were when I met them, which was Matt, Mike, Tristan, and Whitney. And sometime after I stopped playing with them, around that time, I had done more digging. I just looked them up on YouTube because I was trying to find a video from the album they recorded, and I found all this other footage. And I was like, at first I was like, I don't know if this is the same.
It's the same band.
It sounds so different, and I don't recognize anybody. I was like, the singer kind of looks like Whitney, but it was like a fuzzy video, so it was hard to tell.
Right, yeah.
And they hadn't shown Mike on the video, so I didn't recognize anyone else in the band, and I had no idea that Mike and Whitney had a bunch of different people in the band before.
It certainly didn't play off like that. I mean, at all.
Yeah, and they also had this super pro looking video, something you'd see for a major label band.
Weird.
From an earlier lineup. It was a great song too. All the stuff I've heard is great.
I still don't understand why Clean Living Under Difficult Circumstances isn't on Bandcamp though. And I may or may not have hassled Mike through direct message about that. Of what are you doing? Put it on Bandcamp.
Yeah,
what's wrong with you?
I don't know why.
They got that weird dub record on there. It's well, if you have that, what's their problem? Put it up, man.
Maybe. I mean, I can only guess it has something to do with the label.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know, because the label, they generally only put out first releases for bands.
Yeah.
Or they'll generally only do one release with a band, no matter how much they sell. And I know their thing with the label was they're going to make 500 copies of vinyl. Then you can do the label's you can do whatever you want with the record.
Yeah, after that you can do whatever you want with it, but it's not going to be us.
I don't know why they never put it on Bandcamp. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I've never even used Spotify, so I wouldn't even know how to find it if I was looking.
It's on the things that are not Spotify too, but it's frustrating to me because that was one of my favorite records of that year, and what am I gonna do? Point people to Apple Music? All right, well,
yeah,
it's fine. I guess that exists.
Yeah, it's hard to direct people to the album because it's hard to find.
Yeah, I don't get it. I was hoping you might have some insights into it, but it sounds like a mystery.
Yeah, maybe they'll re-release it sometime. They actually had asked me to add my parts to the record, we had this plan where we were going to reissue the record.
Oh wow. With the stuff you wrote for the songs?
With my parts added, yeah.
Oh wow. That'd be
same sequence and everything, but just with with the new guitar. And I was close to finishing recording that when I decided to stop playing with them.
Oh man, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Well, dang, dude, this has been great. Thanks so much for doing it. It's great to have you back. I can't believe it's been as long as it's been since we've talked. It's been a long time, dude. I'm
glad you like that Elephant Rifle record.
It's great.
Have you heard Vulture Feather?
That's yeah. I have it.
That's another thing that I thought you might dig.
Yeah. That's they're somewhere NorCal. Are they Eureka or something? Where are they from?
Hayfork, which is it's about halfway between Eureka and Redding.
I had the idea that they were somewhere on that drive, but it struck me because there's just not a lot of good bands from that area.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of people in that area.
There's not a lot of people in general in that area.
Yeah.
Wow. I haven't thought about that in a while.
It's funny because Dan Higgs was living there. Him and Fumi were living there.
Get out!
Really? Before they moved to Olympia. And I was talking about that with these guys when they were here, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Dan lived in my house. I rented in my house, and I lived somewhere else."
What? That's crazy.
that weird connection. And then also turned
Trinity
out
County of all places.
it also turned out the singer from the band grew up not far from where I have a bunch of family in Maine, and he grew up in New Hampshire.
That's
a weird
wild.
coincidence as well.
Yeah,
and then they lived in Baltimore too, which my mom's family is all from Baltimore.
It's funny because like Hayfork is like, unless you're going from like Eureka to Reading or vice versa, like you would have no business.
Yeah,
no reason to go through.
Even if you're going between those 2 points, it's pretty far off the highway.
It's still like, yeah, it's like you gotta kind of work at it.
Yeah, I really like them. They kind of remind me a little bit of Lungfish.
Nice.
In their vibe, they're kind of like dirgy, kind of single riff vibe.
I'm glad you mentioned something because I remember the name, but I think I didn't save it or something, so I didn't remember to pick it up. But I'll pick that up.
Yeah, there's something else that I felt like I was going to ask if you'd heard that came out recently, but I can't remember what it was now.
Well, you know how to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
Tim, this has been great, man. Thank you so much for doing it, and especially with the whole time mix-up and all that. Really appreciate it. Last thing, this is a canned question, but you can choose to interpret it however you like.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you do what you do?
You'll have to be more specific.
You can choose to interpret it however you like, my friend.
Why do I work?
Why do you make music? Why do you record bands? Why do you
It's a living. That's all I have to say. I'm feeling pretty dark right now, so I don't really have a good answer.
Well, I'm thankful that you took the time to spend to talk to me because I think it's super killer that 3 is being reissued, and I hope that people, if they haven't already, because I know it's a limited edition, pick it up.
Yeah, it might be. I don't want to spook anyone, but it might be sold out already. Because a friend of mine tried to order some from Drag City, and it said they were out of stock.
The numbers look pretty low last time I looked. So
they pressed 1,000 of them, and they had asked me at the outset, if I thought they should repress the other records, which I didn't realize were out of print.
Oh wow!
And I was like, well, let's see how this record
see how this
does,
goes
and
first.
If it sells, then maybe we'll repress for some of the others.
Well, I think it's great, and hey, if you want to repress the other records, you can get that Protonic reversal bump.
One other thing, I just remembered the band Spitting Image. Have you heard them?
Spitting Image? No, like that television show with the puppets.
Exactly. Yeah.
Image.
That's another band that I thought you might like that I recorded recently. The album came out not too long ago. They're from Reno.
They're from Reno. Oh
yeah.
Snap! I think we're playing Reno in October.
Yeah, I think you dig them.
Okay, I will check that out, and I will give you the full report. Will be on your desk as soon as Monday morning.
There's also a band called Sprain, who you might have heard of.
Sprain. That does sound familiar.
From LA.
Yeah, that does sound familiar. I don't know where.
They put out a record 2021, I think. I mixed it in 2020 with them. I didn't record it. And then I did a double album with them after that, which probably be coming out sometime this year or next year.
Double albums, man.
When I first started working with them, they sounded a lot like Unwound, like sort of a hybrid of Unwound and Lowercase.
Sure.
Which they still kind of do, but they've really come into their own. There's sort of almost like a music concrete, kind of like symphonic, avant-garde kind of thing.
Cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, like they have like a 26-minute song.
Oh damn! All right, so they're messing around with that. Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty great. And then there's also another record that I did with Toad Liquor that's coming out pretty soon, which is crazy since the first time I worked with them is in 1995 in Olympia.
Oh man!
And they've recorded at almost every studio I've had since then.
That's cool.
And we've been consistently recording since 1995, just here and there, but they haven't done a full-length album since 1993. So that'll be coming out probably next year on Southern Lord.
I still Love all the Generalissimo stuff you did too. I mean, we could have gotten into all of the stuff that you've done. Like you've done so many great records, but I feel like Generalissimo is a very underrated band.
For sure. Yeah. They're great. Oh, I also did a record with the Losing Streaks.
Nice.
Who I really love. I don't know if you've ever heard them.
No, I don't know. That's
Sacramento garage punk band.
Okay.
I first saw them in 2005 at the 12 Galaxies, and
12 Galaxies.
They
Wow.
blew me away so much that for years I'd ask anyone who'd listen if they'd heard of them, and they're like, "No, I never heard of them." And then I'd never saw them play anywhere, and they kind of disappeared for a while, and then they reformed like with the same members, or generally the same members, about 6 years ago, and put out another record. And then this will be the first time they've recorded with someone other than Chris Woodhouse.
Oh, that makes sense. It'd be Chris Woodhouse. Yeah, I mean, he's Mr. Sacramento.
Yeah, I was working on that for 2021 and 2022. Off and on.
I like that you have like the ear to the ground for all the cool bands in those areas, because I feel like no one else does that I know. So that's a great thing.
Do you know the band Trough from Oakland?
Trough? No. Like
They-
a horse trough?
They did a record here last summer that is out on Bandcamp now, and they're probably going to do vinyl at some point.
Nice.
They're another band that you might dig.
Well, I love the Tunnel stuff. I mean, I love those guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's great stuff.
Yeah.
Good band. Anyway, bands. Tim, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to talk to you as well. And we won't make it so long next time, all right?
That's right.
All right, brother.
It's been fun.
Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.
Oh, there it goes. Tim Green. What a great guy. It's kind of awesome that he has you can make a cool comp of all the stuff he just was kind of throwing out the end there. But love to hear from Tim Green. Drag City's got 3, so go get that if it's still available. I don't know, maybe too late for that. Let's hear some Extra Man, and then I'll close this out here. Extra
Try to imagine.
man. Extra man. Fucking champs. What a cool guy. That was Tim Green. I don't remember the last interview. It was way too long. I feel like that was a better episode, though. Also great to get some clarity on some of the hot topics of the day. Right? So glad to be able to talk to Mr. Tim Green.
Can you hear me now?
You can find him on the internet. He's there's an Instagram account. Louder Studios. He's all up in that biz. Hey, name of the show is Conan, Neutron, Protonic, Reversal. Thank you so very much for listening to it. This show airs Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Streaming on YouTube and Twitch, both. Podcasted later. Archives available, protonicreversal.com. Always free, no ads, no sponsors. No kidding. But if you like the show and want to get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will gladly achieve that goal. It's always appreciated. Thanks for folks for liking the various episodes, subscribing on your platform of choice, sharing the episodes around. And, that's how people find the show. That's how we beat back the almighty algorithmic overlords, right? So thank you for all that stuff. It's appreciated.
50,000 watts of power.
Shows on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. There's a bunch of stuff coming up. As always, stay tuned. Thank you very much for sticking around with it. What is even coming up? I don't know.
This microphone turns
Something
sound
good.
into electricity.
Stay tuned, everyone. Stay safe out there.
Can you hear me now?
Check you later.
Out on Route 128, in the dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? 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 See in the radio. And that snare drum and that drum roll means we've got a winner. If you're the fifth caller, or any caller at all, welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear